So while we are on this Lane Kiffin news, I do want to go over the LSU head coaching search because it is very intriguing now, and a lot of people have no idea what is happening. So the first name, my dog's back there. If you're watching on YouTube, he's just climbing on the back of the couch right beside me. But anyways, back to the coaching search. So Lane Kiffin is obviously the first name. Obviously, Lane is the top choice here. We've seen it on social media. Everybody's going crazy as he and his family, as we just talked about, are rumored and later confirmed to be in Baton Rouge scouting things out, along with Kiffin's ex-wife, if that tells you anything about how far this is going, and along with Gainesville. So he's also in Gainesville as well. But this is a massive saga where three fan bases, Florida, LSU, and Ole Miss, have no idea what's going on. I think we do get a decision this week, like I just mentioned. I really do. But I obviously there's not too much to talk about because everybody kind of knows Lane Kiffin if you're watching this video and how premier of a coach he is and that he is the top head coaching target for all of these schools right now, especially the ones like LSU and Florida who are most likely to get him. So obviously, that's the first name. Another one that's very intriguing to me, which has really ramped up these past 2 days as this whole Kiffin saga has been going on, is Kenny Dillingham. So Kenny Dillingham, he's a candidate that I don't really hear being talked about as much as I thought he would for this job because he's done such a great job at Arizona State, taking them to the college football playoffs and almost knocking off and upsetting in Texas in the college football playoffs last year. But, you know, go look at the betting odds right now. Despite all this Kiffin drama going on, Kenny Dillingham has now emerged as the pretty heavy favorite on some betting platforms to land the job in Baton Rouge. There's some betting platforms out there where Kenny Dillingham is a minus 300 favorite. I know in the coaching searches this doesn't mean much because, I mean, we see it all the time. The favorites usually don't get the job in these coaching searches. At least last year they didn't. Um, but who knows? Because if they can't get Kiffin, say if Kiffin does go to Florida, where do you turn then? That's kind of what we're talking about right now. And minus 300 is pretty hefty. So that kind of leaves you to what does Vegas know that we don't? Do they know something that we don't? And despite this, the odds, the minus 300, they went up this high during this whole Lane Kiffin thing. This is while Kiffin's family was pictured in Baton Rouge. So that's very interesting and something to kind of keep an eye on. But um, you know, um, yeah, I don't really know where to go from here other than I mean, Kenny Dillingham is the leading favorite to get the job right now. And let's add a little bit of fuel to the speculation here. The day after he emerges as the favorite, Pete Nakos from On3 reports that Sam Levitt is likely leaving from Arizona State and will be going to play for another school or the NFL draft, but it seems more likely that he's going to be in the portal going to another school. If there's something that we don't know yet, this could be a sign. I don't know what it's adding up to, but things are starting to add up. Maybe Sam Levitt knows something that we don't. It's kind of weird that Vegas puts Dillingham as a minus 300 favorite. His name has been thrown around a lot in these coaching searches, although Arizona State is Dillingham's alma mater. So would he leave there? I don't know. I think you do for a job like LSU, and I think despite it being your alma mater, you kind of have to. Like I said, the pockets are so deep there. It's such a premier job that you're just not going to get another opportunity like that. And you have more of an odds, or you have better odds to win a national championship at LSU than you do at Arizona State. And that's just, I think anybody could agree with that. But it is kind of weird that this report came out right after Dillingham became the minus 300 favorite to take the LSU job. So, very interesting there. So the next name that we're going to get into is Joe Brady. He's been floated around a lot for obvious reasons. You know, he helped coach and develop Justin Jefferson, Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase. and more of that talent that was on that national championship squad that year. Arguably the best team in college football. I would say they're pretty easily the best team in college football. I mean, they kind of blew everybody out of the water that year. You know, now the offensive coordinator in Buffalo right now, also with Josh Allen. So look at that from the outside. Elite offensive mind. Not to mention, he just took Josh Allen's offense and won Josh Allen an MVP. And they've been to the AFC Championship multiple times in the past few years. But, you know, like I said, elite offensive mind. But the question is, will he take a job in college? And if he does, it probably is LSU. I personally think that he will get offered an NFL job as you start to see some of these NFL jobs open. You saw the Titans open earlier in the year. We saw the Giants open last week. Um, Miami's most likely opening up, and then some other ones. Like there's going to be a few open NFL jobs, and I think Brady will be interviewed for mostly all of those. So it's kind of weird whether he does go coach in college or whether he stays the offensive coordinator in Buffalo because he did turn down some head coaching interviews last year, or whether he takes a job in the NFL. But um, another thing here with that is Brady has mentioned in the past that he doesn't like the idea of recruiting. So it kind of makes sense that he would just stay in the NFL because you don't have to do you don't have to recruit in the NFL. It's all built from the general manager. You're not having to go to all these high schools and make all these phone calls and recruit these kids in. Just use your salary cap and go out there and buy the guys in the NFL. And you don't really have to handle any of the roster movement. Just go out there and coach the roster that's given to you. But if he does take a college job, like I said, it's LSU because he has LSU ties. And like I've mentioned with all of these, the opportunity is just like no other, unless you're getting offered like an Alabama job. But I think you put an LSU job up there in the same tier or almost the same tier as the Alabama job. Probably not the same tier because obviously, for obvious reasons, Alabama probably is the most premier coaching job in college football. But LSU's not as far behind as people think. And another thing here is there are some risks because he's an offense coordinator, no head coaching experience. So do you want to go that route? Because this is a program trying to win now, obviously. You can go out there and hire almost anybody in the country that you want to. Almost. So do you take the risk in hiring a guy with no head coaching experience, although he was super successful in your program already? I just don't know. I feel like this is an LSU program that really can't miss on this next hire. So they need somebody out there with experience, and I don't really see them taking the coordinator route. But Joe Brady is a name to kind of monitor, although I don't see that one happening. Another one that I can see happening, but he is tied to some other jobs as well, is Eli Drinkwitz. So this is one who was a hot name really early in the cycle and then kind of died down after a few losses. He lost his starting quarterback, Bo Perbula. Sorry, tongue twister. I don't know. I don't know why I have trouble saying his name. Bo Perbula lost him against Vandy, and the team hasn't looked so hot, but they're still winning. They're still winning football games, and I think Drink is being massively slept on because of that. And you know, the reality is he's probably going to be one of the top choices for Florida if they can't get Lane Kiffin. So if LSU can't get Lane, I've heard Penn State is also tied to Eli Drinkowitz. Don't know how much truth there is to that. I've personally heard that Penn State is between two head coaches right now, which I'll make a separate video about or talk about on another podcast. But, Drinkowitz, he's a guy that can come into LSU. You kind of question the fit because he's not that Southern guy. He's got a little bit of a nerdy swag that you don't really see much at LSU. You don't see much of that vibe at LSU. So will he fit? I don't know. The personality, the culture fit. I don't know. His personality's good. I will say that. But LSU, you need a certain personality. And that's why Brian Kelly got fired. You know, the culture, it just wasn't a good culture fit for Brian Kelly, and it led to not much success there. But you know, like I said, Drink, he can come in and win you football games, though. That's what you want to do, isn't it? Like that's the goal. He's done more with less than a lot of coaches have in the SEC, and that's something that not many people are mentioning, in my opinion. I think he could come in and recruit very well because he's done that at Missouri. You know, you look back, he's gotten 5 stars at Missouri, he's gotten 4 stars, he's gotten just talent that Missouri has not gotten in the past. Like, if it wasn't Drink there, Luther Burden probably most likely doesn't end up at Mizzou last year. So just imagine what he could do with more resources at LSU. Not to mention he uses the portal very well. And I think that if you get a guy that uses the portal really good in this modern day college football era, you are LSU, you're set because obviously that's going to be one of the hot spots. Everybody wants to go play for the LSU Tigers. And that's just the truth. So another one, this one's very interesting, is Marcus Freeman. I know if Notre Dame fans are watching this, they're going to hate me. They're absolutely going to hate me saying this and even mentioning this name. But you have to think there's a possibility in some realm. You know, this is kind of like the Lincoln Riley to USC or even Brian Kelly to LSU last year type situation where, you know, a coach that you would never really expect to leave a school, a big school goes out there and makes a big splash to bring him in. And that's what we saw last year with Lincoln and USC, and even or not last year, a few years ago with Lincoln Riley and USC and Brian Kelly and LSU. And I do think that Marcus Freeman is one of the better coaches in college football. And I think there's no argument to that. I think that most people could agree there. And he's most likely, outside of Kiffin, the top candidate for all of these coaching jobs. But there has been rumors that he's turned down the Penn State job when they've offered it. He's turned down the Florida job when they have offered it. But think about this. You know LSU has at least called. There's no doubt that LSU has at least called and checked in on it. You've heard not a single report saying that Marcus Freeman has denied the LSU job. Who knows? If Notre Dame goes out and loses pretty early in the playoffs, if they make, like, assuming they do make the playoffs, then maybe we have a little situation on our hand there. Also, Marcus Freeman's name is also tied to some NFL jobs out there, and with more opening, I expect his name to be floated around even more. I do think he would take an NFL job. I think he should stay in college for a little bit longer because I think he will eventually be an NFL coach. If not an NFL coach, he'll be one of the top tier college coaches in college football, like he kind of already is. But, you know, like I said, LSU, they're one of the top 3 to 5 jobs in the country with a deep background of winning culture. It's a rare opportunity, and you know, this is open, and it might not be open again for a long time. So I wouldn't be shocked if he takes it after the season, maybe before the season. I don't know. I know he loves it at Notre Dame. If they don't get Lane Kiffin, I would have to think that they go all in on Marcus Freeman because where else do you go? Where else do you go? If you fire a Brian Kelly and you're looking for that big splash and you can't get Lane Kiffin, I don't think the big splash is Eli Drinkwitz. I don't think the big splash is Joe Brady. I don't think the big splash is Kenny Dillingham. And that's not saying that these guys can't come in and succeed, because I think Dillingham would be a great coach at LSU. Joe Brady, there's some questions there. I think he would be a good coach at some places. I don't know about LSU quite yet. Could he recruit there? Absolutely. Will he be a good head coach there? I don't know yet. Eli Drinkowitz, good head coach there, not the biggest splash. Marcus Freeman, I think that's big. That's massive. For obvious reasons. So that'll kind of do my little bit of due diligence and what I've kind of heard from the LSU head coaching search and from the LSU coaching hot board, I would say. So stay tuned for more updates on that because I do think we will get a Lane Kiffin decision here pretty soon. Who knows where that goes?